The Maya Museum of Cancun has two floors. The entrance levels is an open garden with art exhibitions, and the main archaeological collection is on the second floor, accessible by a nearby elevator or a spiral ramp. I took the latter. As I was climbing the ramp, this corner of the museum appeared, and it shocked me. Though it was my first visit to the museum, I'd seen this glass enclosure, lit at night upon an elevation, in a dream. I had to do a double take to make sure I was actually awake. It was telling me that I should expect to see spiritually enriching things inside. Dated to 10,000 years before present, the saber tooth is the oldest exhibit in the museum, which otherwise showcases the diversity of artistic styles and media across the history of Maya civilization. Evidence of Maya settlements along the Caribbean coast date from over 2,000 years ago. This flower-shaped vase from Arroyo Negro, toward the south end of the state of Quintana is dated between 300 BC and 250 AD. The museum features masterpieces from across the Mexican reaches of the Maya land, including this mythical panel from the famous city Chichen Itza of the North Yucatan Peninsula, and an important collection of painted ceramic incense burner chimneys from the Palenque region of Chiapas toward the west frontier of Maya land. The real strength of the museum, however, is its collection of artifacts from the state of Quintana Roo and especially the Caribbean coast. This fresco from the coastal site of Xcaret preserves vibrant paints depicting a figure recalling the Maya creator god Itzamnach. Another fabulous display of Maya color is this building elements from Oxtancaj on Quintana Roo's southern coast. 3 spots on each cheek recall symbolism for the jaguar, one of the most powerful, regal, and sacred animals in Maya culture. Also toward the south end of the state, the site of Tsibanche contained a trove of precious artifacts. These pieces of jewelry were made from the beads of greenstone, shell, and chrysoprase. One of the most important discoveries from Tsibanche was a queen's tomb within a chamber beneath the so-called Owl Temple. The preciosities included jewelry, ceramics, and stoneware. This case shows a few examples from the tomb: an alabaster bowl, jade and pearl jewelry, a ceramic vessel with monkey designs, and this fabulous ceramic vessel capped with a lid shaped like an owl's head, for which the temple got its name. Returning to the coastal side of Quintana Roo brings us to today's mask. Forged from a human skull, today's mask was discovered at the site of Chac-Mool, on an island just off the central coast of Quintana Roo. Notice the rows of holes drilled into its back, suggesting points where a net or mesh may have been formerly fastened, to hold feathers, hair, or other organic material to the cranium. Dating between the 11th and 13th centuries, the skull was perforated like examples from the Mixtecs, suggesting a long reach of cultural influences between the Maya land and Oaxaca. To compare further with other native Mexican traditions, the skull may have been decorated for ritual purposes, similar to works made from human bone and sculpted ceramic at the Aztec Great Temple, as I show in another video. As I mentioned earlier, many artifacts discovered from the Cancun sites are now in museums, including a few here, in the Maya Museum of Cancun. This standing incense burner was excavated at El Meco, the first archaeological zone in this episode. It depicts the Maya rain god Chac, identified by a pointed nose that could represent the shape of a tornado. The second zone was El Rey, named after the king portrayed in this stone head. Elements of colorful paint remain on the figure. Shaped like a serpent's head, the king's headdress could spiritually relate him with the creator god Itzamnach, whom we saw in a beautiful fresco painting earlier. I share more details on this figure in a video about my website uploader app. Another interesting work from El Rey is the standing incense burner, with spikes jutting around its cylindrical form. The design then suggests the Ceiba, sacred to the Maya as both the mythical world tree and the source of copal incense. Such were the lessons my dream had forewarned me to learn. By now I had already walked around El Meco and El Rey. Time for El Levator. It would return me to the ground level to visit the zone of San Miguelito, visible through the window. The northbound corridor at El Rey would have continued to the complex of buildings at the south end of San Miguelito, now attached to the Maya Museum of Cancun. Unlike El Meco and El Rey, the archaeological site is heavily shaded, and its forested enclosure felt farther inland than the previous two, even despite the bay waters practically visible from here. The site opens to the north end and offers a walking circuit around the south end and back. At the north end stands this major palace, named for stairway symbols of the Maya rain god Chac, whom we saw earlier in the incense burner design from El Meco. Like the large structures at El Rey, the Chac Palace had a large, open facade for officials to perform public ceremonies for the people who would gather at the plaza space in front. One of the most remarkable works at San Miguelito is this small room, whose walls retain hints of a formerly intricate fresco mural. The elements include fish and other aquatic creatures related to the Maya myths of the world as a massive reptile floating in the cosmic sea. The room belongs to the so-called Dragon Complex, nicknamed from serpent carvings discovered during the 1970s. This part of San Miguelito was a square of related buildings whose functions included housing, food preparation, and ritual for the nobility. And, finally, the pyramid at the south end is San Miguelito's tallest building. The site description notes that this monumental work would have been originally framed with upper cornices and painted in red and blue, colors associated with many of the largest structures in Maya civilization. Now that I had completed my tour of the archaeological sites around Cancun, it was time for my taxi back to the hotel. I tipped the driver generously for his time to guide me for the journey. The city of Cancun has many resources for tourists, locals, and indigenous descendants to explore the history of the Maya people who still live around these lands. Please subscribe to the Eye of the Serpent channel for videos on the Native American cultures of North, Central, and South America. Your Patreon support goes toward research, travel, and production. Thank you for watching, and good roads.